everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Onigiri & Co podcast. Today I have a special guest. This is not a drone pilot, this is not an FPV pilot, but I'm super happy to have Christina on this episode. Hello, Christina.
Hi. Even though I'm not a drone pilot or something, maybe you can drone me though. You might FPV me one day.
That would be awesome. I've always been after a woman drift pilot. I call them drift pilot. It's drift driver, right? That I could chase. That would be awesome.
Yeah, boy. I have to learn how to do a track day first, and then I think one day this year we'll get there.
Yeah, hopefully. I hope. Or even if I don't chase you, I love taking photos of motorsport, like any type. Yeah. So it would be really cool. But yeah, I'm so glad you're here. For people who are wondering why you're here and you're not a drone pilot, I have an answer. It's because in 2024, I'm trying to expand the podcast to more guests that I think are super interesting. Obviously, trying to put the light on people I admire, especially women in anything, because anytime a woman does something, I'm like, yeah, go girl.
Like when I found out you're a drone pilot, I was like, that is awesome. I don't know any female FPV drone pilots. I was like, that's so cool.
Yes, so I'm so glad you're here. And what we're going to do today is just introduce you to everybody, talk a little bit about your journey into your passions, your motorsport passions. And you can start whenever you want. You can introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm Christina Vithoulkas. I'm 28 years old. I'm originally from rural country Australia, well, South Australia, in a town called Barmera. It's like a region, it's called the Riverland, so there's a lot of small towns that are very, very sport orientated. Like if you didn't play sports growing up, you like, it was weird. Well, and that was me and my sister, we never played sports. We never played sports, but everyone seemed to play sports and stuff like that. So I grew up in the Riverland with my twin sister, my mum and dad. We traveled a lot growing up, so I think just traveling a lot overseas and having a twin sister, I didn't really have a passion for anything other than spending quality time with family. Like that was my passion, just having a twin sister that already was like a best friend. I didn't really need any more friends. I had a lot of my cup filled from a young age. But when I moved to Adelaide, South Australia, like for university, when I was 18 years old, I wanted to start studying teaching. My twin sister and I both, because we're twins, have to copy each other. Both decided to do teaching, and it was about the third year in. Irene and I were just like this is not us. Like we want to get tattoos. We were getting told like you can't have like hand tattoos. You can't, if you're going to be a teacher, you need to delete social media because you need to have like a professional outlook on life and look professional to students. And or if we have social media, we have to change our name and hide ourselves. I don't know, everything just like the older I got, it took to about 20 years old before I realized the more of that like being forced upon me as a kid was like my body was just rejecting it. And now I'm like, I'm an adult. I want to do what I want to do. Mm-hmm. So fast forward a couple of years. So we drop out of university. I moved to Victoria. I started traffic controlling, so I was like a lollipop girl.
Yeah.
And everyone was just like, how do you do that? Like, they were just like, that must be the most boring job. And now that I realize I've got ADHD, I think it explains why I love traffic control, because like I would just sit there with the lollipop and just like talk to myself. Like I had so many conversations with myself. I'd plan out my week, what I want to do, my passions, and like that gave me an opportunity to do nothing but think about all the million thoughts I had in my head. So I enjoyed it. But I actually, at 19, so just before that, sorry, I should backtrack a little bit. I found dirt bikes. So when I went to university, I jumped on a motorbike, and I also like fell in love with motorbikes. And I realized my whole life growing up not playing sports, like why I didn't play sports or why I didn't get into, I did play soccer for a little bit, but I didn't like it as much as I liked motorbikes. And I realized it was just like, I just need like a high adrenaline sport, something like fast pace and again, ADHD, risk behavior things. And yeah, so when I remember actually my last university placement that I had for teaching, I was at a kindergarten, like 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds. were there, and I brought my motorbike to the class because it was like show and tell, and they wanted me to bring in my stuff, and I told them, and I rode motorbikes. So I was like, can you bring your motorbike in? So I brought my motorbike in, and that placement was like the moment I realized like I was having so much fun riding motorbikes and racing and doing freestyle motocross. And for those that don't know what freestyle motocross is basically like jumping a metal ramp and having like a distance of like 55 foot was my distance, 17-meter gap, jumping a metal ramp and landing on a dirt or metal landing. I also did motocross, which is like racing a motorbike around a circuit. The more I did that, the more I realized like following something that I love and makes me happy made me hate more of the things I was forcing myself to do that I didn't like. And then if we fast forward to 2018, I had my motorbike accident. So again, for those that don't know, I'm not sure if you can see it there. I've got a wheelchair. I am now a paraplegic. I actually found this out recently. Sorry, I'm just talking so much. You just butt in whenever
I love it.
I found out recently on a TikTok, they said ADHD, on another podcast, people with ADHD, undiagnosed ADHD, live 10 years less than most average people because we participate in risk behavior activities. And like, for example, me, I'm in a wheelchair now.
So, but you're here.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'm here and I'm on a podcast and no, it's great. Life's good. So
yeah, that's I'm impressed at how you managed to have a summary that is that condensed. Yeah, so I have lots of questions for you today, and I think I'm ADHD too. So right now they're all popping at the same time in my head. I'm just trying to maybe I should have written down them in order. But to come back to your years of motorbike, of dirt bike, how did you get into it? How do you get started in such a sport?
So that's what I mean. If I didn't have a boyfriend at the time from high school, high school, I think. If I didn't have him have a motorbike and I didn't jump on the back of it, I would never have gotten into motorbikes. Even though as a kid, if you look at my twin sister and I's like our like childhood, we would always race home from the school bus, go down the driveway and jump on a four-wheeler. We had a four-wheeler quad and we used to like ride around the block, and we used to race trucks on the highway. So we would race home, get on the motorbike, get to the corner of our block where there was a big sweeping bend, and we could see when a semi truck was coming. So we would wait there. Once the semi truck was coming around the bend, we would drag him like 300 meters, probably more like 400 meters on the highway. And like now looking back at it, it explains so much why I'm into what I am into now. But as a kid, like that we never rung any bells to be like, oh, maybe we should ride motorbikes. We never knew about it. But I hopped on the back of my ex-boyfriends at the time, and then I was like, oh my God, I love these. Like, this is what I want. I don't want to be the passenger princess. Like, I want to be riding this thing myself. So 2 weeks later, I bought a motorbike, and that's how I got into that.
Okay, wow. And then from that to, because I believe, well, I don't know if it was you or your sister now, I feel bad about it, but I've seen photos of, when you do those type of figures on a dirt bike, and how do you get from just riding a normal motorbike to actually do crazy things on it?
Yeah, so, well, my twin sister now, after my accident, she went ahead and got a Harley Davidson. So I'm like, oh God, hopefully she's safe on it. But, so she rides her Harley and does like little tricks or steps on the bike and stuff like that. I was doing freestyle motocross. So the reason or how I got into that was because I was a young female, 19, new to the scene, and was getting a few like comments, and I could tell I was being talked about behind my back because these people would like bully me online, not like directly to me, but they will upload photos mimicking me and like posing next to their bike like I am, and basically just it was obvious to me that they were just paying me out for being like a poser. So I was like, because I love my motorbike, but I'll take my selfies too. Like, I was like, just because I'm new to this sport doesn't mean I don't love it as much as you do. Same way as like, I have a cousin that pays me out because like I don't know all the footy players' names, and I love Port Adelaide Football Club. And in my head, I'm like, just because I don't know every single player's name doesn't mean I don't love the sport as much as you love the sport. You've just invested more time in the sport. Doesn't mean I don't have the same fire lit up inside of me. And that's how I felt with motorbikes. But because I'm stubborn and I'm Greek, I have a Greek background, stubborn woman, I was like, I need to prove a point to these people. So once I started jumping, I was like, fuck, I got to keep pushing myself. I'm going to push myself further. And I started hitting ramps. And then I totally forgot about them. And I was just like, wow, like now I've just jumped a ramp. Let's like try taking feet off the ramp. Let's try doing no footer and stuff like that. And now looking back at it, I was like, I totally forgot about those guys. But looking back, I did more than them anyways. Like I ended up like overtaking them and like doing stuff that they would never do. So it was just like interesting that like what started all that was basically me just wanting to play catch up. Like I just felt like all these people had grown up riding dirt bikes their whole life. And now I had to play catch up to get to a level where, you know, I could get a little bit close to them. Not very, I was still very far away. But yeah, I guess that's what like motivated me to try different things on the motorbike.
Okay, well, that all makes sense, and I like that. Yeah, your story makes so much sense. I feel like a lot of women in different hobbies or passions can relate to having to have to prove themselves, and then ended up being a bit successful because we work so much, because we get criticized more. That at the end of the day, we actually get better. So
yeah, I was listening to yours and Renee's podcast, and listening to you explain about how you don't make your, like when you first start out and you don't make your own FPV, and it's like a big stigma, like you should make it. And when I was listening to that, I was just like, oh, I can understand, but at the same time, I just wanted to like say shut up to all those people that even have those opinions, because so what? Like that you don't make it. Like how does that change you as a pilot, other than your, no offense, like wasting time and spending more time on making your own pilot? What if you're a millionaire? Would a millionaire make their own? Like, I guess some would, like, out of habit. But, like, most people that have more money and don't have as much time would pay someone to go do it. If I wanted to get into FPV droning, I wouldn't build my own. I'd go to someone else. I'm like, because in my head, I know I don't need to prove myself and my passion just by making something.
Yeah, and most of the time what ends up happening is a lot of people know how to fix a drone when they break it, but at this age a lot of people actually buy ready to go drones as well, you know. So and it's a bit like when I saw Sean. He's not the person tuning his car. Sean is my partner, for people who's wondering. And then he's not expected to tune his own car in his drift community, whereas sometimes in the drone community we're expected to do everything, and if you don't, you know, it's a bit weird. But to be honest, our community is pretty good. So that leads me to my next question. Overall, the people you met in real life when you were doing dirt bike, how was the atmosphere? Was it still weird, or was it actually welcoming?
Yeah, it was very welcoming. Other than those like couple people that like get intimidated or like just, you know, there's bullies in every like industry you go to. Someone's always gonna be sour and whatever, so you ignore it. But the general community of the motocross community were amazing. Like I thought like these are like family. Like even when I had my accident, they went and done all these fundraisers and they all came together. And at the track, like if you would break something, someone would come and get a tool, and everyone was very, very, very helpful. The men were very welcoming and, you know, wanting to teach. You know, I think they get a kick out of like helping a female. And it's probably like a bit like refreshing for them to talk to a female other than like another stinky male. So it was really, really good. And I love the motocross community, but I must say the drift community has like just that one little level higher. I don't know if it's because of the maturity level, because most people into the drift scene are a little bit older because you come into like adult money now, and you're into a more expensive sport. But I feel like the drift community is like, again, just like another amazing family.
I feel the same from seeing from the outside perspective. I feel like it's the same type of people that build drones, except we have less money. I think that's what it is.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have been correct. I don't have money. Like,
yeah.
If I have a drip card, that means I'm definitely broke. I am, yes.
Yeah. No, but I mean, everybody is broke on the same level. It's just, I didn't mean that drift drivers had lots of money. I'm just saying, if anything, you know, we chose the easy way out of finance.
Definitely.
And actually, this is interesting because I don't know if you know that in the FPV community, we have a lot of people who also come from, so it's either a lot of people come from BMX, skate background, just like in drift, where people also do that, but also we have people who experienced some accident just like you did, and
Mhm.
so they cannot ride bikes anymore, they cannot drive a car at all, but they find ways to fly the drones, and so being immersed with the goggles and everything, they say they at least are able to
Mm.
keep their adrenaline
Yeah.
almost as the same as before. I'm quite impressed that you
Mm.
are going to drift, so you didn't choose the FPV way. That's okay. We can get onto that another time. We can teach you to fly. But yeah, how did you decide to get into drift, and also how hard is it to get into drift post accident? That's my question.
Yeah. Well, I was actually talking to Jesse about this, like my partner Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to Jesse about this yesterday, how I had like this epiphany moment that I remember at rehab when they told me as a paraplegic, you will become a better problem solver. Like, just naturally, we become better problem solvers because we have hurdles we face daily. So we always have to adapt, change, find new ways. And if we let the first roadblock stop us from trying to do something, like we might as well give up. Like, I might as well stay in bed 24/7. Like that,
Mm-hmm.
like it's just not a way of thinking. And when I had my accident, it was about I did get back on the bike to prove a point to the doctor, but it was about a year and a half later, someone invited me to go out drifting, and I was just like, I don't know what drifting is. Like I thought of like Tokyo Drift or something. I'm like, I think it's like a car doing a burnout. Like that's all I kind of knew about drifting, and I was like, well, I like burnouts. I like going fast, and I like cars. I'm like it just seems like all the ingredients for a recipe of a good time. So I'm like, I'll do it. And I went out there, and the first corner I was in the passenger, the first corner I took, I realized it was the same feeling I got from like hitting a ramp.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that I didn't even think how I'm going to be doing it. Like, how am I going to drift? I just knew I'm going to make this happen. Like, I didn't let that like roadblock stop me. And I feel like a lot of people don't know how to do things, so it just stops them from like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, like people are like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna buy a drift car and start drifting. And I bought one 2 weeks later because in my head I'm like, oh, all I have to, like if I can drive a car, so I can do drifting. And then I had like over the years, because it took, by the way, for people listening, I took 3.5 years to build this drift car because it is so expensive.
Yeah.
But it took me 3.5 years to build, and I went drifting for the first time the other month. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone was asking her, how are you going to drift? How are you going to drift? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I haven't really thought of it. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, like it is going to be hard. Like, I'm going to have to do it maybe with like one hand. But like that, I just didn't let that stop me because I'm like, I will figure a way. I know as a paraplegic, things that seem impossible to people initially, there are ways around it. You just got to think harder. So yeah, it wasn't actually hard to get into. It's just very, very expensive to get into drifting and very, very time consuming if you're building your own car and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that you were like, I'm gonna do this, and then people were like, how are you gonna do it? Oh, we'll see.
Figure it out. Like I think because at that time I had figured out a lot of things. Like I went traveling to Queensland on my own. My dad's like, how are you gonna go to Queensland? How are you gonna check into hotel? I'm like, I don't know. Like I'll figure it out. And then I put myself in positions where I'm traveling across the country on my own, doing things on my own, and having to figure stuff out. And then you just like, I don't know. It's just in your brain you start to realize you start to worry less about issues because you already, like, your subconscious knows you can get around it at some point. Just it might take longer or cost more or be more time consuming, but there's no such thing as like impossible in my head.
Yeah. Were you always like this, do you think?
Yeah, I guess like before my injury, I was like this in some extent. Like I was stubborn. I was always adrenaline seeking. I was always like, I had these attributes, I believe, my whole life. But once I had the injury, it was like, now it's on a stage and on display to everyone. And like, it put it to the test even more so because now I had more of a reason to do more. My injury literally made me, I feel like, do more than the usual able-bodied person because I'm like, I need to prove people I can do this and I can do this and I can do that. And in the meantime, I stopped worrying about proving myself to people. And then now that I look back at it, like 5 years later, I'm like, holy moly, I've done way more things that I've done if I wasn't paralyzed. Like if I wasn't paralyzed, I think I would have just done the same thing and, kept doing that, like still pushing myself, but not to the extent that I am now. Now I'm like, oh, nothing's impossible.
That's so, I love it. I feel like it's inspiring and it's a beautiful story, even though, obviously there's an accident involved, which, is probably not the best thing ever. But how did you leave that period of time though, where you were maybe in the recovery phase, if you want to talk about it? Was it
Sorry, what was that? Did you say how
hard?
did I feel?
Yeah. How do you, yeah.
No, like, and that's another, like, a shocker for everyone, because, like, I never mourned my injury. I never for a second thought my injury was bad. Like, when I woke up, I was just like, okay, this is my situation. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, I'll adapt to it. And I feel like people don't understand that. And I feel like it's kind of my fault for not explaining probably why I feel like that, because I think I've, like, kind of forgotten to mention, one, I had a back injury a year before I paralyzed myself. So I already nearly paralyzed myself a year later and overcome those thoughts and was like, nah, I realized doing what makes me happy is more important than stopping myself from doing something out of fear of something going wrong. I had a conversation with my dad and he said, like, what if you end up in a wheelchair? And I was like, I don't care. I'm doing what makes me happy. Doesn't matter. I had already, like, mentally prepared myself for it without, like, knowing that I was going to paralyze myself. I would always say to myself, I remember seeing other freestyle riders or motorbike riders, and, like, I shouldn't, like, say this, but I would judge them.
You can say it.
The way they would cry and sook over their injury, and I shouldn't say this because a lot of people, like, that's normal. That is totally normal. To injure yourself and be upset and mad is totally normal. I get like that and I react like that over stupid little things that aren't even an injury. I didn't do it for my injury, but other little inconvenient little situations happen and I crack the shits and I cry. But for some reason, for motorbikes, I was like, this is the sport you're choosing to play. You know the risks involved. Why sook about it? So I said to myself, if I ever had an accident, so I don't know if I manifested my own injury, but I would always tell myself, one day you're probably going to have a big injury. You're probably going to break a femur. I always thought it was my femur. But you're probably going to break your femur. Just remember, that's just a part of the game you're playing. If you don't want to play it, don't play. You're going to be not judged on the mistake that you make. You're going to be judged on the way you handle it. Don't be a sook. And then by the time my injury came, it was like, that was already, like, wired in my brain. I didn't even have to think about it. I'm like, that's fine. Get on with it. Just, yeah.
Wow. I guess it's a very pragmatic way to see your past hobby. It was like, well, I love this. These are the risks.
Yeah.
And, you were not surprised. You were not shocked Pikachu face, if you know that meme.
Yeah, that's it. And I feel people, like, they take life for granted. And people go by their day-to-day life and drive to work and they just think, I'm not going to have a car accident. I'm not going to get a phone call today that my mum has cancer and he's about to die. I'm not going to like, people think that their life is going to be perfect 24/7. So when something happens, they're like, oh my God, like, this is the worst thing. And it's like, we've got to be so grateful for the health that we have now. The fact that we're even alive and can breathe and talk, like, that alone, I feel like if you can't be grateful for that, when something small and any small inconvenience comes, you're like, it's the end of the world for you.
Yeah. Did you know that before the injury? Were you already thinking this way?
Yeah, I think because of my dad. Like, my dad always repeated in our head, like, every time we go to the supermarket, like, I'm not exaggerating, at least, I actually think my dad has an issue, like, with repeating himself, because I think 95% of the time, every single time we went to the supermarket, we would always leave it. He'd go, remember, girls, we're so lucky that we can go to the supermarket, fill our trolley up and go to a home with a roof over our head. Like, and he would say that every time. He just repeats himself. And, like, I as a kid, I used to think it was so annoying, him repeating. But now as an adult looking back at it, I'm like, no, Dad was just doing daily affirmations with us without even him realizing, and without us realizing. Those daily affirmations made us just always thinking, he'd always say glass half full, like, always made us think, like, the less, no matter how much we were missing out on as kids, like we didn't have like brand new cars, or our house was really run down and old and we had duct tape in the kitchen floor, and we didn't have like the materialistic things that our, you know, family members might have had, our cousins or other friends. Dad would always say like, we are so rich, we were so lucky. And Dad always repeating that, like always saying we're rich out of happiness. Because, you know, some people have all this stuff and have this materialistic stuff, the new car, the new houses, because, but are they happy? And I remember Dad always embedding happiness in our mind. And when I had my accident, I woke up and I had all my family in my hospital room, and I was happy. I was like, oh my God, it's a family reunion. Like my cousins, I've been my cousins for years. And I was just happy. So in my head, when people were looking at me in bed, paralyzed, like the worst thing ever happened to me, I was just like, oh my God, I am so rich right now. Like, I bet no one else here get to see all their family right now. Like, it's just like a mindset that Dad really wired into our brain, that I think the only way to get to that, like, point that I was at was having a father repeat himself every single day for 18 years.
That's awesome. And it makes me think of something that I've read or heard. I don't remember exactly where or when. It's about being happy, like happiness in life. It's like something that is in us in the first place. And no matter how life changes around us, we will always be able to see and handle the same level of happiness. So let's say suddenly your country is like not in a good shape, and, you know, everything is collapsing. Well, they've done studies and have went in those countries where things are difficult and asked people how they were rating their happiness. And after a while, and that's a bit sad, but your happiness goes back to the same level as it was before life changed. And it's the same the other way. Some people have a life that improved a lot, either financially or for other reasons like career or whatever. And then if they were not super happy before, they might instantly feel happier, and then it goes back to how they felt before. So I guess it's
sorry to interrupt you there, but like
that's okay.
That's why I want to go back and touch base with what I said before about like people getting upset over, like, because I don't want people listening to feel bad for being upset, because I feel like, so like you said, if you don't know how to find happiness within, like, that's like you need to be able to find, like, you can always grieve. I grieve more now, not about my injury, but about stupid little things. I do that more now because I've realized how important it is to accept bad feelings or bad energies, or something goes wrong. I realize that how important it is to accept it, recognize it, feel your emotions, but then also learn how to deal with it after. Like, what decisions are important to make after that, because you can feel upset about something. Everyone has a right to feel upset about a certain situation, but I guess how you learn to cope with it after is what's important. And I guess these people that are overseas, in, let's say, in a war or something, and then they learn to get their happiness, because it's like, at a point you kind of just have to accept the situation you're in, and now it's your decision to be like, well, do you want to keep going? Like, do you keep wanting to go? Like, you know, you can play the victim all you want, but you're gonna lose. Like in let's say the game of life, you're choosing that might get you some sympathy for a little bit, might get you this, and but at the end of the day, you're gonna lose. And I guess I'm a stubborn, competitive person. I don't want to lose. So like, I'm like, all right, I need to win. So yeah, but that's a really interesting fact. I that makes sense, but I've never heard that, but it makes sense.
And what is impressive is that it's not always conscious. People are just, they've been like this always. And so they go back to what they know most. And I feel like for you, your injury definitely affect you temporarily in what you could do, because you had to retrain your body, I assume, to get simple thing done, like even just sitting up, I assume.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Sitting up was
a journey.
That was the first hardest thing, because I couldn't sit up without fainting. Because
geez.
Something I've actually haven't even spoken about this on my social media before. But it's interesting. I found it interesting learning at rehab is because when you're paralyzed, and by the way, for the listeners and watchers, I'm paralyzed from here. So when your muscles are all relaxed, that means when you stand up or sit up, your muscles normally contract and stop blood from dropping. But because my muscles are all relaxed, all the blood drops. So every time I would sit up, it was like I would faint, because all the blood would rush down to my feet. And every time, and I remember for a very long time, it was like 6 months, I'm like, I'm like, ask my ex or a nurse or someone to like lift my legs. And that would be the first thing to do to make me feel better, was to lift my legs up just so the blood could like come back up into my body.
Wow.
Crazy.
That's things we don't think about. How do you train your body to, can you train it to not do that? Do you have to, what do you do?
They just said keep doing it. You just have to keep, and eventually your body just has to adapt to that. So now I still get lightheaded here and there if I haven't eaten and I've gotten up and I'm like, whoa. But your body, again, like what you said with like the other side, like the more you do something, the more you adapt to it. So with that was everything was I learned because I got to a point where staying in bed felt great, like it does now. Staying in bed felt great, and I feel good, and I'm relaxed, and I'm not tired. But at some point, it gives you like, well, it affects you negatively, and you actually end up doing more damage because you're relaxing and you're feeling good too much. So I learned from my injury, pushing myself and doing stuff like people. I was talking to Jessie's mum the other day, and she was saying how she's starting to feel really like tired and not motivated. So she would go on walks every single day, and she stopped the last 2 weeks. So I think she had to babysit or something, and she stopped walking. And she realized when you stop walking for 2 weeks or doing something for 2 weeks, you actually lose a lot of motivation and you actually feel worse. So with my injury, I realized the more I make myself do things I didn't want to do, the better it was. It actually paid off in the long run. Even though temporarily I was like, I don't want to do this, I'm going to get a sore back or I'm going to feel tired later. It was better in the long run because my body was getting used to it.
Yeah. How do you motivate yourself in those moments where you're like, I don't want to do anything?
I had something recently happen to me that bit like emotionally, like I was saying, like just I go in my emotional parts and I was just like, I'm not dealing with this right now. And I was not motivated. I was like to Jess, I'm like, no, I'm staying in bed today. Like, I'm just going to feel my emotion. And I let myself do that. That's why I was like, I let myself rest. I'm giving myself. But it got to a few days and I'm like, right, I can't do this anymore. Like now, if I'd stay like this is where you're going to end up causing, I don't know, worse thoughts, I don't know, leading to depression. Or something. I was like, I'm not getting to that. I'm just going to feel my emotions. So I did that. And the only way to motivate myself to get out of that was the thought of not being into like a depression. I don't want to be in depression because waking up with depression, and if anyone's listening, I'm sure there are people out there that do have it. That's not easy. Waking up every day depressed is probably one of the hardest things to do. Waking up depressed, unmotivated, that is hard. That is so hard. So I give credit to people that suffer with depression and rock up every single day, because that would be the hardest thing, because I feel like I've been in moments like that in my life where I've been depressed before my injury and after my injury with other unrelated topics with my injury, just other stuff I was dealing with. And I feel like that, and I'm like, it is so hard. So the thought of being in that position again motivates me to like do something that I don't want to do. And then I notice, okay, if I don't want to do something, force myself to listen to happy music, force myself to listen to upbeat music. I forced myself to go outside, get sunlight, stuff that I didn't want to do. I wasn't in the mood to listen to bangers and like techno hardcore music. But I was like, just do it. And I would listen, and I'll be like in the shower and there's like bang, 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 like techno music. I'm like not even vibing it, but it doesn't matter. It's like you fake it till you make it. So I would do that, and then I'll get sunlight, and then I'll do something, like I'll do something productive, and then boom, all of a sudden it's like, okay, like you feel better. And then you like, it's like a snowball effect. And then the next shower you have, I'm like, okay, I'm listening to the music. I'm doing this. Like it's forcing yourself to do stuff that you don't want to do. So I don't say it's motivation. It's discipline. If you can learn discipline, then you don't need motivation.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It makes me think of something else about people who are neurodivergent or who have ADHD. Are you officially diagnosed, or do you have like strong suspicion?
My sister got diagnosed this year. I know I have that. As in, like, I've never been diagnosed. I just know I've got all the symptoms. But I also took Dexies, the ADHD medication, and it just mellows me out. I get tired. I feel normal. Like, I remember I had my first Dexie, and I was with a whole bunch of people, and I remember just sitting there, and I'm like, I don't want to interrupt anyone. Like, I was just like people were saying things, and I was just like, I knew, because for like 28 years, I know how I react in conversation. And I noticed, I'm like, I'm not butting in. I'm not interrupting. I'm not. And I was just like, I felt like I was a director, and I'm just like filming this scene, and I was an actor. and I felt like normal. Like, this is boring. I don't like it. So I was going to take the medication again. I'm like, nah, I don't like that. Like, I'd rather procrastinate and have my ADHD symptoms than like feel boring. But I have like Red Bull. Like, so people like,
oh, geez,
see me drinking Red Bull, but Red Bull has the opposite effect on me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if I have a Red Bull, I don't get energy from it. So that's why so people think I drink Red Bull all the time, or they see me energetic, like, oh, you're like having a Red Bull. I'm like, no, I use Red Bull to like calm me down, calm my mind down, and like, it's just, yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm not officially diagnosed, but I believe I have it.
I was asking because the way you described how you slowly get back into action after a sort of lower phase is a good technique for people with ADHD, because you probably know that we have a harder way to.
Do we have it?
Yeah, oh, well, I have a strong suspicion that I do have it. I always say we, but I could say they, but I include myself because I feel like I do have it. We have a hard time producing the happiness hormone, if we want to just
dopamine or something.
Yeah, wow. and it only happens when, and also the thought of happiness, the future happiness, doesn't make me or us produce dopamine. It's only delayed. So you have to, while in your state of despair, you have to start doing happy thing, and then suddenly your brain will start making that hormone. It's actually I learned that from another podcast, which is more scientific than now. And so what you describe,
I am a scientist.
While you were talking it, I'm like, this is exactly the process that they recommend. Is like, if you're not in a mood, you have to start ahead of yourself and force yourself, and eventually you will get something done. So.
Like tonight, so I'm invited to an event, a tennis event. I don't watch tennis. I don't even care about tennis. But Novak's going to be there. Novak Djokovic, I don't even know how to say it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and Ash Barty and stuff, and they've invited me. I'm like, I don't want to go. I really don't. Like, that would sound ridiculous. I'm like, I was actually going to I was going to message him and, like, lie. I shouldn't say that, but I was going to lie and say, I'm not I actually, you know what? Sorry. I actually did lie. I already messaged the guy saying I'm not feeling well today. And I'm like, no, Christina, because I know the moment I'm there, I'm going to be so happy. You'll see me, like, I'll be so energetic, and I'll get all the endorphin hits, and I can't wait to meet them, and so, like, it's gonna hit me. But like you said, like, it totally makes sense what you said about that being delayed. Like, it's just because because I don't have a dopamine hit of it yet. I don't want to go, but I know once I'm there, I'm gonna want to do it. And I actually was gonna ask you if you had ADHD when you said you did the FPV, because I'm like, that for a female. Again, adrenaline-seeking, fast-paced, like...
Yeah, I really like speed as well. I love being in the car with Sean, and I just love... I would love to drive, but I don't think I'm coordinated enough, though.
Do you reckon you can drive an FPV drone while being a passenger?
People have tried it before. Apparently, it's a very strange experience. The first time you're most likely to crash.
Oh, okay.
but I would.
We can do that as your like an experience. We could test it out. See if you can follow me while being a passenger. But I can't.
Oh my god! I think we would have to do normal driving first, and then one day start the drifting.
Yeah, definitely.
So going back to drifting, so that's your new thing. You're excited about it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what your process of making a car? Because obviously you drive a different car than everybody else I know.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know anything about cars, and like you were saying about, I thought it was funny when you were saying how FPV drone, like, you're required to like fix your own drones. Like, I built a car for 3.5 years, and people ask me about it, and I'm like, whoa, don't ask me about my car. Ask Jesse or ask Dee. I've been building this car. I've been there for the whole car build, and I still don't know anything. Like, all I know is when I got into drifting, they told me to get a light chassis car, like an S13 that I've got, a Nissan Silvia. And they said, if you have an LS, which is a V8 motor, heavy, big motor compared to what other drifters use, they said that heaviness and the light chassis would help me because I can't use my feet and because I can't clutch kick. I still don't know what clutch kick means. I don't know if it's because I can't use my feet, but I actually still don't know what that means. But I say it to everyone. So apparently I can't clutch kick. And that heaviness with the lightness will make the car like spin out or like, go into a drift much easier. I knew I could drive the car because I drive a Ford Ranger every single day. So I've got the same hand control system that I do on my daily in the drift car. So what I had to put was a hand control device. So it's like this big chunky black thing that wraps around my hand, and it's got a like a throttle pedal thing for my thumb. So that does my throttle, and that's by Bluetooth. So there's no wires.
Wow.
That's direct Bluetooth, and it hasn't cut out yet, kinda. Like my Ford Ranger sometimes, but like it's only delayed. Like it's like a delay thing.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, but like whatever. I want to drive, so I'm not gonna let that stop me. People are like, oh my god, like that must be so dangerous. Like, yeah, but like drive or not drive.
Do you think it's always the same delay? Sorry, I interrupted you.
No,
Do you think it's always the same kind of delay, or is it variable delay?
No. Like it's a short delay, and that delay only happens very randomly. I haven't experienced that in my Ranger yet. Oh, hold on, I put a notification. Does that matter? Chloe?
That's okay.
I haven't had that happen in the drift car yet, but that's because I haven't like driven the car enough.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, I've only drifted once. I went to a drift school, and then I did about 4 hours of drifting, and then the car was misfiring, so I couldn't drive anymore. So I'm hoping I don't have those issues, but my partner Jesse drove it, and he drove it fine the whole time. Yeah. So I'm hopeful that issue's not going to happen in the drift car. But so that's my throttle. Mm-hmm. But for the brakes, I've got, like, as most drifters would have, like an e-brake, a handbrake. I've got that, but the difference between mine and other people's handbrake is that I can push mine forward, and that works as a normal brake. So all 4 brakes lock up pushing forward, and only the back 2 brakes lock up when I pull back. Other than that, that's really all I need to drive paralyzed. But for extra safety, I don't know the word, extra safety additions or whatever I've added a fire suppression system in my car. So in case there's ever a fire, I had these nozzles facing my engine bay and my feet that activate as soon as I press one button. All I do is press one button and gas gets released and extinguishes the fire, hopefully. Hopefully I don't need that. So
yeah. And that's because you would obviously exit your car a bit more slower than other people.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even though I did do a video and I jumped out in like 25 seconds, and that was like my first run of like pretending there was a fire. But I think if I could do it again, I reckon I could get it down to 15 seconds or 10 seconds, I reckon.
Yeah. And then people would be there quickly to help you.
Again, that's another thing I'm not worried about, because like there's issues with the insurance at the moment, and people, like, I'm getting like warned that, there might be a time where I'm not allowed to drift because of that situation. And it's just crazy because, again, like I said to my father when he said, what if you end up in a wheelchair? This is the same for what if I end up burning alive or catching a light? Like, I still want to drift. Like, that risk doesn't scare me, because the thought of like, okay, for the rest of my life, I'm not going to drift, that scares me so much more than catching a light on fire. Like, so much more than like, oh my God. And the only reason I went so long, the last 3.5 years building the car, the only reason I lasted that long was because I knew I was going to start drifting, and because I went drifting as a passenger in the meantime to keep that like adrenaline hit and dopamine hit going. But yeah, I think I'll be fine.
Yeah, I think you will. And to me, from having witnessed lots of accidents on motorbikes around people who know other people, I feel like it's a lot more dangerous than drift, especially Australian drift. Not saying it's bad.
Yeah, no, 100%, because that's why I got back on the motorbike, but I didn't do it or go back into it because I wasn't motivated, because I knew if I fall, all I have to do is fall over, which is very likely on a motorbike. You do it able-bodied or not. If I fall over and I sprain my wrist, all I have to do is sprain, then that means I'm out. That means bathroom, shower, rest, everything I can't do on my own now. Like all my independence is gone. So the idea of drifting in a car with a roll cage, a helmet, fire suit, fire suppression system, I'm like, I am so safe. I remember crashing with a friend, and all of the guys ran over at this track because we hit a wall, and they ran over and they're like, "Oh my god, like, are you okay?" And I was just like, I'm used to knocking myself out. Like, we hit a wall and I'm awake. Like, that was fun.
Yeah.
And in the GoPro footage, I'm like, woo! I'm just screaming the whole time. Like, I'm like, you need to knock me out for me to even think about like being worried for a second.
Fair enough. That's what I was thinking you would feel like in a drift car where you have roll cage. Exactly everything you said. I'm like, it must be a lot more safer in your mind than just being exposed on a motorbike.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, we're approaching, I think, the end of the episode. And also, I know you need to go soon, but I would love to have you again, maybe in 6 months' time or when you have more drift experience. Would be awesome to have your feedback.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it was a great introduction to your person today anyway.
Thank you. No, thank you for having me. And hopefully I can learn more about you next time so I'm not just like, no. You know I have ADHD, so I can't shut up.
It's the goal of it's a perfect guest on the podcast. It's talkative guest, so I'm really happy you were talkative. If people want to learn more about you and have a look at what you're doing, like where should they go?
They can search. I really need to change my Instagram name because you can't spell my last name. But if they just search my name, Christina Vithoulkas, spelled CHRISTINA _ VITHOULKAS, Vithoulkas. That's a Greek last name, by the way, so I don't expect anyone to be able to say it. I've got Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all under the same like things. Facebook, they can follow me on there as well. So I try to share all my footage on all of those.
Cool. Well, I think hopefully this podcast sends a few people your way, and maybe maybe some people will start either dirt bike or drift after that.
Maybe we can swap. You can drift, and I can do your FPV drone. I think
it would be actually cool to try to teach the other something once we know a bit more. I'd be keen to try your car.
Definitely. I think so. I think that's what we're going to do. And then we can report back to everyone how it went.
Yes. Well, I wish you all the best in the meantime, like for your next drift schools, for your next experience. I hope you have a good night tonight with Novak Djokovic. Jesus.
Thank you so much. Hopefully I get to meet him. It's not promised, but I feel more privileged talking to you. I'm more excited to talk to you than I know that.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. We'll do it again then. And thanks everyone for watching on YouTube and for listening. If you like this episode, feel free to give us some ratings or share it with your friend. If you really like the episode, you can support me on Patreon, Onigiri and Co podcast. If you didn't like the episode, please don't give us any ratings.
Yeah, don't leave us any back.
And I wish you all some happy flying, happy drifting, happy biking, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye-bye.
See you, everyone.